Welcome back to the Secret Message Report. I'm your host, John Kelly. With me today on the Secret Message Report is Greg Sullivan from JCETI.org. That's JCETI.org. That's the Japan Center for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. Greg, it's great to have you here. Thank you for joining me on the show.
Thanks, John. Good to be with you.
Greg, we met at the JCETI Ranch a couple of years back, and we skywatched, we exchanged stories and ideas. What was that like for you on that trip? You'd been to the ranch before, and then we met. Was it in 2011?
That's right. Yeah, last summer. That was the first really official visit. I could say the first time I went really was an impromptu stopover. I didn't spend a night in Trout Lake. I had been there in Portland for a wedding, and was leaving back for Tokyo the next day. Last year when we met, actually, I was actually able to spend several days in Trout Lake at the ranch and around the ranch and on Mount Adams, and it was great to get a lot of feedback regarding filming and video from you, and I really enjoyed our talks.
Yeah, definitely. I thought it was a great connection. Now, you had heard of JCETI Ranch before. How did you find out about that location?
Well, that's actually a lot of part of the groundwork that started this project. I've been in Japan for now about 10 years, and back in when I was living in Tokyo full-time, I kind of started a period of time when this information, a lot of kind of the underground alternative media sort of sparked my interest again after several years of being sort of dormant. And amongst the several interviews and stuff I was looking at and listening to online, someone in passing, I believe it might have been a Coast to Coast AM caller, mentioned James Gilliland's ranch and everything, and then I just sort of kind of noted, that sounds interesting, and the next couple months later I was there in person, so it was sort of definitely a sort of synchronistic flow of everything in that regard.
So it's very interesting, as you said, there was sort of a natural flow that led you there. And I think we saw a few things together when we were out in the field. 2011, there were some very exciting sightings.
Yeah, definitely. All the power-ups and all the, several lights on the mountain. I think there's a lot of people there, too, where people are given a real opportunity to, have an eye-opening experience there. There's things moving every night. That's the first phrase that really stuck out in my mind when I heard about JCETI was, there's nightly activity. And when I called and spoke to one of the younger staff members at the time, back in 2008, I was sort of, almost had half a foot still in the parking lot thinking, is this really... what's really going to happen here, So it's interesting now to, after so much varied experience, to kind of look at people having that, on that first, a lot of the sort of quote unquote first timers, it's interesting to kind of see the contrast. But we're all still learning, and it doesn't really matter, how many times you see something. Really, it's more of what happens inside. I think we start to realize as time goes on.
Well, it's interesting. So you identify that there are stages of growth and development for people who are researching and exploring questions related to contact with UFOs and extraterrestrials.
Definitely, yes. It's a mosaic, and I think different people have different triggers, and different people have different hang-ups and blockages or questions that they grapple with. I definitely saw a progression in myself, a sort of series of sort of essential realizations, you might call them, or some people describe it as the veils dropping in order. It's interesting how we all see the same, we all sharing the same reality, but everyone's filter is slightly different. So I think ET contact offers sort of an alchemical, sort of an ideal, stable reference for people to keep continually coming back to work on themselves.
So ultimately, it drives people in a direction, an inner pointed direction. There's inner elements that are awakened through these contacts and communications, and the mind becomes fertile with ideas, I guess, as a consequence of being in those kind of experiences.
Exactly. And I remember the first summer when we met, one of the sort of impressions or messages I was getting was, don't look outside, let's meet inside, and it's, at a certain point, the amount of external phenomenon is sort of just kind of redundant in the sense that it's really, are you getting it inside, or are you having those realizations, and are you stepping up to the level of more a more deeper contact and communicate?
That's very interesting. Is this pathway a pathway to more inner growth and development? Do I observe that I'm changing and growing in a positive way as a consequence of these kinds of studies? And I guess for you, the answer is yes.
Absolutely. So yes, yeah. And I think a lot of the James and a lot of his staff have done a great job in helping people facilitate those experiences at the ranch. So yeah, it's wishing them luck for the rest of this year, and it's a great place to go.
Well, we're talking with Greg Sullivan from JCETI, the Japan Center for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, and we're talking about how we met at the ECETI Ranch up in south central Washington State. James Gilliland, famous contactee who's been leading thousands of people on skywatches out in his field of dreams where the UFOs fly over regularly and are captured on camera. They're fascinating sightings, and certainly a lot of room for interpersonal growth and development at a place like that. Now, tell me more, Greg, about the Japan Center for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. You're located in Tokyo, is that right?
We're more in the countryside in western Japan, over in Kyushu area.
Okay.
And basically, this time when I first came to Japan, I had been in New York City as a college student, and then graduated and was working for a few years, and I was interested in being out of the big metropolis kind of situation. So I've kind of landed back here. This time is my sort of return to Japan. I actually moved home for a year and a half, and so this is the second time around, and I went right back to where my first landing was here in the beginning, back in 2003 in the Kyushu, which is a real historical area. It was one of the only places that was open during the whole time of the isolation. So it's actually closer to mainland Asia than Tokyo, believe it or not.
Mm-hmm.
So at the moment, really my place here is more of a storage unit at the moment. I'm hardly ever at home, and my schedule, with lectures and events, keeps me pretty active and moving around. Japan is a very compact and easy to travel country, easy to travel in, but at the same time, it's very dense, as I'm sure you're aware of, and also the cultural variation from area to area. The regional variations are very colorful, and it's been a pleasure to be able to kind of go around and meet people in different areas and see the different kinds of natural environment that we've been able to do contact events in.
So you say there's distinct and local and regional cultures that you can tell as you travel around the Japanese islands.
Exactly right. They call it kenminsei. The Japanese states or prefectures. They have their own dialects and their own specialty foods and festivals, and there's a lot of variation. There's a lot of variation on the culture here as far as the different sort of use of local either natural sites or national parks, and also cultural traditions that vary from one area to the other. It's really interesting. So
tell me more about the JCETI agenda. What is the long-term plan for JCETI? What will JCETI do in the Japanese communities?
Oh, that's a key question. Yeah, actually, obviously we're working towards, open contact. It's been called, I guess, first contact, or we're sort of doing a lot of groundwork here. And it's actually sort of to put it into a simple term, it's sort of giving a version update to the whole UFO scene in Japan, really. This is something that I hadn't been expecting when I came back. I was really a musician and a sound engineer, working with a lot of musicians and artists in the first 5 years I was here, and had absolutely nothing to do with the sort of New Age spiritual or even social movements at all in Japan, other than music, and especially underground music. So when I came back and started to look at, what was going on with UFO and contact information, and what was going on with information and reporting about ascension here, one thing that shocked me was the fact that they were sort of in a pre-disclosure, status quo here. So when I saw that, I immediately recognized the fact that, whoa, this is sort of our homework, isn't it? I kind of recognized that was something that we were supposed to be helping to sort of liaise with, and we've really both information from the JCETI Disclosure Project and the JCETI have been extremely valuable for people. Really, it was a pretty brutal state of affairs 2 years ago, and in the meantime, we've had I've been able to move around all over the place and meet with a lot of key figures in the spiritual scene, people who are doing their own events and doing their own research, as well as a lot of their groups. So people have been really interested. And as we went into 2012, Thrive has really caught on. So both as we entered this year, Thrive has really been a big help. And also finally, someone 10 plus years later finally put Japanese subtitles to the original Disclosure Project press conference from 2001. So if you can kind of imagine, I think it's probably hard to imagine after all the alternative media that's come up in since we entered 2000 and beyond. A lot of that is missing here. So they're still in the sort of print media and a lot of just amateur blogs. They don't have the audio interview / video interview culture to anywhere near the degree that's happening right now in the West.
That's very interesting. Now, tell me more about local cultural perspectives on the UFO issue. Is there a place in Japanese culture for these ideas? I'm in some ways, knowing Japanese UFOs from YouTube, I may be a little surprised to hear, as you describe it, there's sort of an arch conservatism towards the entire issue in general amongst the population there.
Yeah, it is an interesting paradox, as many things here are. A lot of the television, a lot of Japanese video as far as UFOs, they've done a lot. They show some interesting footage, and one research element that's kind of been out in Japan a lot more publicly than in the U.S. is the Clarion pictures from Italy's Maurizio Cavallo. Mm-hmm. He has a series of books out here as a sort of contactee who got actual, alleged facial photos of these Clarion humanoid beings, and that was on major, mass communication, sort of variety television here. But it varies from a lot of people who are having contact. We know in our events, they say this is the first place I've been able to actually talk about it. So our events are also stimulating community in the sense that many participants, they're having contact and sightings on their own, but they know they're unable to talk about it at work or even at home. And in extreme cases, people will just have been thrown into psychiatric wards. They have an extreme. I think that was with the case of especially with a JAL pilot, which was covered in the Disclosure Project. The one in the 80s, which was had about a 2-hour, was flying parallel with a large craft over Alaska. So I think people in position of influence are really muzzled in an extreme way here. So there has been a real culture of just ridicule within regular society as well. So it's an interesting. So me being the foreigner here is sort of almost like I'm like a Trojan horse. People don't quite shut down as fast. They'll actually kind of hear me out. So I think that was all sort of a part of the plan here in places coming from places unseen. It
might be easier for the Japanese public to hear such ideas from a person who's from a foreign place rather than from someone who's local.
Exactly. And I've been told that, by people who have been at our events and who have also coordinated our events. They want to know what's going on in the West as well, and they're people. I haven't had a single person, once they hear what disclosure is, once they hear the points about free energy and what's been behind UFO secrecy for so long, I haven't had a single person say that's impossible or walk away still doubting. So it's a long overdue, and again, it seems like it's like a version update of the whole consciousness here in terms of UFO and ET contact.
Well, it sounds like in some ways there's been an enforced culture of isolation in terms of the silence, the cultural silence with regards to these issues, or the limited venues through which, large-scale discussions are taking place. Maybe something on an entertainment show or as a topic of a joke, but the profound dimensions of these contacts is, as you said, those people in that society is still trying to link hands, so to speak, and unify, and to get the message out to the mass.
Exactly, and I think there has been a concerted effort. I mean, WikiLeaks was here, and you'll open, and I opened several books and magazines that you would think that the Disclosure Project at least would have been standard fare, and it's just not there. And again, it's an obvious effort that it was. I mean, they've heavily edited that kind of thing out of both TV and any kind of magazine, even specialty magazines. It's just absolutely, it wasn't present at all. So I had a chance to get involved with the media quite rapidly, not by no effort of my own, and ended up last year we put out a book and kind of got the word out about disclosure a lot more, so that we've seen a lot of the kind of ripple effect from that, and people taking action on their own. Mm-hmm. And Thrive has been a huge push in that direction as we entered this year. So, I think that the fact that the hive mind, this is something we talk about with the resonant fields of consciousness and the 100th monkey effect. Japan has such a strong hive mind effect that on a more sort of esoteric level, a lot of people recognize that in the country here as well, that there is a concerted effort to sort of keep that information out of the view of the public here, because the 100th monkey effect sort of this is going to be maybe a theme of our talk here, but the 100th monkey effect coming out of Japan is sort of the hive mind effect here is very, it's easier to kind of congeal people's consciousness together here than other places, I'd say.
So what I'm hearing you echo is this idea that disclosure of contact and related issues is perceived as having potentially a transformational effect on the society in which it occurs. That's
right, yes. So I'd say, I mean, there's the whole, fear factor, and they got all the movies here from Hollywood, of course, but the Japanese television has used the tactic of sort of sensationalism, and this unfortunately has plagued the research community in terms of there's also not a culture of open debate per se on a kind of a superficial level, and so there's a lot of people getting away with murder in terms of absolutely no proof and just sort of shooting off at the mouth with very unbased claims, and we've had to confront that in almost every step of the way here, kind of giving people the tools of discernment and questioning is why exactly do you feel that's a valid point, and things like that, and a lot of times with those sensational videos that they will show on TV, it's sort of like they it's sort of like this roller coaster effect, or like a fireworks display where they'll show this crazy video, and then everyone will scream and ooh and wow, and then they'll quickly end the conversation, and they've also had a couple of a lot of the UFO books are published by just a couple publishers, and those people, the presidents of those publishing companies, have been on TV and repeatedly bashed and abused, and it's hard to say whether they were there willingly or not, but it's unfortunately same as the U.S. A lot of the UFO researchers, quote unquote, are just a kind of veiled kind of disinfo agents. You know what I mean?
Okay, well, that's sort of a heavy note there, but we'll not quite go there yet. We're talking with Greg Sullivan from JCETI, JCETI.org, JCETI.org, the Japan Center for Extraterrestrial Intelligence in Kyushu, Japan. And some very interesting remarks. I had met Greg at the ECETI Ranch in the Pacific Northwest, skywatching and exploring UFO questions, and I learned about his research in Japan. I thought it was excellent, and I was very excited to learn more about the growth and development of Greg's work, and I know that we're going to be hearing from him in the years to come, because some of the videos that he's producing and the information are absolutely sensational. Well, we're talking about Japanese culture, and I'm hearing you talk about cultural initiatives related to desensitization of the populace to these issues, but also an emphasis on sensationalization without adequate process, analysis, and assimilation of the ideas and their potential and what they represent. Almost stupefy the population in connection with, or stupefy the collective in connection with ideas related to UFOs. It doesn't inspire profound philosophical thought. It inspires sort of a dumbfounded surprise, and then people move on. It's a way to control, attempting to control people's experience, perhaps even their evolution, if we consider this idea that disclosure may be perceived as a source of transformational change. If the general populace is made aware of existence of extraterrestrial civilizations and their interactions with humans, and that possibly that governments and institutions of human institutions have limited powers in terms of how they can dictate what interactions take place. We know that a photographer in Washington, D.C., that was written up in a column in the Examiner, examiner.com, Will Allen, had reportedly received notice from a senior person in the White House, I believe, complaining that his disclosures of UFO information, his impeccable photography of UFOs in Washington, D.C., would somehow contribute to this destabilizing of society, and so seemingly a mirrored attitude, perhaps the American influence in Japan, Japanese contemporary culture being felt on this level. At the same time, Greg, I'm very familiar with some of the YouTube videos of Japan and sensational, seemingly sensational locations available there on those islands for taping and encountering these incidents. And your photography, your videos just the ones I've seen that you've shared with me, are already remarkable. Let's talk a little bit about. We've talked a little bit about the cultural setting, about the political setting of the UFO culture in Japan now. But talk to me more now about the types of UFO incidents, the historic place of the UFO, and what the field teams are seeing and recording now.
Yeah, thanks. As you said, and I was given sort of premonitions of this, that there's a ton of excellent places for contact here, and so many nooks and crannies. And many people might not know that Japan is 4 main islands, and over 70% of that is mountainous terrain. So there's a lot of mountains you might have even seen in Nintendo games. Really, there's that don't look like anywhere in the U.S. or Canada or Europe even per se. So that offers a lot of interesting landscapes, of course, there's the whole temple and Shinto shrine, Buddhist temple and Shinto shrine network of areas that we've sort of, in some ways, been on at times on a sort of pilgrim trail. That's sort of a whole other issue. Let's say we've had in Western Japan. There's an enormous limestone plateau. There's very few trees on this area. And it really almost looks like somewhere on the moon. And there's rocks protruding from these grassy slopes and knolls, and that's has an excellent wide open sky. So we've used that area called the Akiyoshidai limestone plateau. We're actually going to be there again next weekend. There's several areas in the Japan Alps, which we finally just got to go to at the end of last month. We had some fabulous contact there, up in Tateyama, which is the one of 3 holy mountains in Japan. Another one of them being Mount Fuji. Mount Fuji area is really nice. The slopes are very kind of long, and there's a lot of great sky views. However, there's a lot of a whole lot of military focus on Mount Fuji. It's a little bit too top 40, you might say, or sort of in the terms of contact spots. It's a little bit too focused on right now. So we've experienced, we had a couple events in the Mount Fuji area, one of which was sort of definitely interfered with by some heavy chemtrail activity in the middle of the night. Other places include down in the Okinawan Islands, which is fabulous. We've noticed overall that, you know, obviously the countryside, getting away from city areas, Tokyo and the Osaka Kansai area have proven to be, you know, a little bit hard to penetrate as far as it takes, you know, in Tokyo 2 hours one way a lot of times to get anywhere near what you might call full-blown nature. So, you know, we've been a lot of our work in the first year of JCETI was sort of scouting out locations and doing a lot of test runs and you know, camp and being in an area for a few days to suss out locations and you know, see what they looked like at night and whatnot. But overall, it's been a great time and a lot of excellent contact.
So, from what I've learned so far from watching the videos, is that there are airborne objects, but there's also these nocturnal lights that appear near to the ground.
That's right. We have a lot of ground light activity in Japan here, and again, I think with all the mountainous areas, it seems like they are. There's definitely either some underground bases that they're operating from. One of those is definitely right now in Kyushu, the volcanic activity. Most all of the volcanoes in Kyushu as of 2011 are now in full active status. Sakurajima in Kagoshima Prefecture, down at the very bottom of Kyushu Island, has been, you know, covered on YouTube with a lot of eruptions. Also, just north of that is the whole Kirishima area, and then a couple hours north of that is the world's largest volcanic caldera called Aso, Aso Kuju National Park. It's a beautiful area with a lot of hot springs. The whole island of Kyushu here is just full of hot spring areas. So some of the earthworks and some of the other, you know, work that's been they've been supporting us with behind the scenes. These are real hot spots, so to speak, where their activity on the ground and near the ground and under the ground is definitely a lot more of a focus rather than the sky. And this is really helpful because when we have cloudy nights, really the weather doesn't matter at all. It can be rainy, and we've had skies open up directly above us just to, you know, expose the full sky of stars just right where we are only. We've had, and then, you know, when it's cloudy, the mountains provide a very high contrast backdrop where they've, you know, time and time again demonstrated a back and forth, a bilateral communication with our groups on site.
Well, I'm very open to the ideas related to ground lights. You know, I've taped ground lights at Marfa, Texas, at the JCETI Ranch Field of Dreams, where the lights came right into the grassy field. And I've also taped them on the walls of the UFO Canyon in the British Columbia interior, where I've been going every once in a while over the last couple of years. I have the video of the lights erupting right on the side of the canyon wall. It's pretty profound, and so for you to be, you know, I can relate. But it sounds like the abundance of incidents and locations where you can see this in Japan is far more intense, and that must be amazing. Tell me more about a typical ground light sighting and what happens.
Okay, yeah. Basically, just to say as an aside, we've also sort of run into the confusion about, like, you know, contact's got to occur at a power spot. You know, whether it's so we've kind of trying to move away from that paradigm as well, but and show people that the fact that if you have a coherent group consciousness and if you have everyone with the correct intention and motivation for contact, that right now things are moving so quickly that, you know, we've had this kind of support in places that you might not think contact would be possible. But a typical ground light could be things, for example, you might see at first smaller, very tiny lights flashing, or normally when we get to a location, and things will start moving immediately. People will see normally orange or goldish lights, or flashes of red or blue, or mostly also bright white, clear white lights. We've had them pose as lights on the edge of mountains. We've had them posing as cars moving in mysterious directions, sort of where there's no roads on a mountain. They'll sort of mimic headlights or taillights, and then immediately switch directions. Or as some of the footage we saw together last month, John, we've had episodes where they'll flash at us, and we'll do back and forth with a laser pointer, and then in the night vision camera, you won't be able to see them anymore, but I'll be filming their location, and you'll have an area that's like 100 square meters just exploding with light, and you could see that flashing between the trees, and with the naked eye there's nothing happening. It's a really interesting...
It's a paradox.
Yeah, it is.
Another Japanese paradox. So just to clarify, these are situations where the night vision will see a really well illuminated field with all this light source, but the naked eye isn't seeing any of it.
Exactly right.
Wow, that's amazing.
So the amount of variation is intense, and we've had on a busy night, up to 20 locations that are. We've had the craft on the ground. One particular incident was looking down from the top of a ski area, from the top of a large mountain down across out to the ocean, and they were at the foot of the mountain area in the rice fields, sort of mixing among the lights of the small towns, and so it does take. That's what our group work is for. We encourage people to pursue this on their own, but a lot of times people. It's sort of like when we're doing it as a group, they have the assurance that people are seeing it with them, and we use the pointer to distinguish. Hey, look at the average brightness. These are the fluorescent lights in people's property. These are the street lights, and look at how bright this light. That's a lot of people have commented that it looks like it's a living light or like a candle light. The way it's sort of always kind of shimmering. And we obviously had strobing and intelligent flashing back and forth, so as well as energy exchange, which is another whole level of the contact. So it is definitely an onion with many layers.
It's interesting. I remember in Marfa it was a light that behaved like as if a vehicle was doing donuts out in the desert, shining a beam in all these directions and changing directions as you described it, or imitating a vehicle. But like my colleague and I were looking out into hundreds of miles of nothingness. So there was it was a windy night, and this light was very bright, and it was perplexing. I guess if I was in Japan and I was witnessing alongside of you some of these other events and had more context, that would help me to understand better. But I have spoken to witnesses in Texas about disco ball type lights on the ground, and so it's very it's refreshing to hear your perspective on that as well. Now, one of the things you've mentioned a couple of times about inner-directed flow and self-knowledge orientation of these kinds of studies is that your group prepares collectively for the sightings. This isn't camping with a six-pack and your buddies. This is an intentional, protocol-focused exercise. Well, when we start, talk to me a little bit about ethics. Are there ethics that guide JCETI?
Yes. Well, I mean, as far as the contact, we as a base are using the JCETI CE5 protocols for contact, and we've been involved with the global CE5 events and in touch with the coordinator in California, Costa, for that quite a bit, and otherwise, really, it's basically the biggest thing is I always do a lecture ahead of time. So every what we do at JCETI is we don't just jump in, and it's not it might be called an amateur effort, but at the same time we try and keep professional standards of. And look and interacting with the context of where we're working in, and the fact that I was ready to get into more of the deeper elements, and found that wherever I went, people hadn't heard a disclosure at all, hadn't heard of free energy at all, and so we've kind of had to reset the whole disinfo based paradigm or the way of thinking. Oftentimes on the night of an event, so we've had a lot of support in that regard. So we try and get everyone as much as we can on the same page before we go out, and then we ended up using the contact protocols out in the field, which help kind of give people a frame of reference, and I think using the send up some really that. So and then we've trying to share consciousness and get to a kind of field with this sort of I call it image training, and we've had a lot of ideas really come out from our friends out in the ET side. I get blasted with ideas on site, so it's really been a learning process for me. And I use some of my engineering background has come into play, and their use of sound in terms of the solfeggio frequencies. We use them on site, and really trying to just give people as many interests as to the shared experience of a meditative state or a collective consciousness state. And from there, we always see the deeper activity or occur, or if there isn't any real activity, once we make those efforts, it's really that kind of work that the ETs are coming to share, it seems.
So learning how to concentrate the collective consciousness of the group, unifying, harmonizing, these kinds of ideas are what you're finding to be effective in preparing the group to enter into a contact experience? Exactly.
But as I mentioned before in one of our previous conversations, John, is that with the whole issue of there are social parameters here that I have to deal with that aren't kind of existent in other places, and those are the fact that respecting elders. There might be situations where someone much older than me, especially if they're male, sort of gets the leeway at times in terms of commenting on even the contact that's happening there. So I have to sort of sometimes step aside and be flexible. So at times I've had to swallow my pride and gently nudge people back in the direction that we're trying to aim in. But so it's been a road full of interesting experience for sure.
So there are times when you have to defer to the opinions of others, but still, I think your goal, it sounds like, is to create an environment where people are free to share and discuss their own opinions and to form their own decisions. You're not trying to compel people necessarily to interpret their experience one way or the other, but you're giving them the opportunity to make those evaluations for themselves.
Exactly, and on the flip side, I don't. I've had people try and look to me as the guru, and I always make sure to say, look, we're here as a facilitator. This experience is going to continue, and based on how little this information is out in the open here, I always urge people, please follow up on your own. Look to the skies. Look for your next experience, because these ETs they're here en masse. They're in support, and you don't have to wait for me to come back for round two. And I've had a lot of people who, even without me saying that, have had their own experience. And when I see them the second time, they say, just the next day, or just the next week, or a few days before coming this time, they had their own sighting contact experience. So things are moving really fast, definitely.
Well, these are powerful for the experiencer. It evokes all kinds of feelings and ideas. Being in a profound situation, an encounter, a contact with what seems to be, a powerful and highly evolved intelligence. Why don't we talk more about, the world of belief and ideas, and about the public perception of spiritual and New Age groups in Japan? What is that like in general?
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. More so than. There's actually an element of a Japanese mysticism that's not really in English at all. So I was definitely interested to be here and learn about the context we were operating in. Obviously, the whole Buddhist and Shinto element. A lot of the cosmology that I appreciate in terms of that's shared sort of both in ECETI and CSETI as sort of sort of the forefathers of this whole human-initiated contact field, is really easy to understand for Japanese people in the terms of the animism element and what they call the 100,000 gods here in the Shinto world. And there's a real resurgence in Ko-Shinto, which is the ancient Shinto, not the kind of non-religious or more pure philosophy-based element of that. So there's a lot of people studying the whole grid work connection to where some of the shrines have been, Shinto shrines are placed, and there's connections to the Lost Tribes of Israel research happening here, and the fact that there's been, there's a Star of David in one of the biggest and most famous Shinto shrines, Ise Shrine in Mie Prefecture. There's kind of Hebrew symbology, and if you compare the Japanese katakana alphabet or script to Hebrew, it's very similar in sort of the curvilinear look of it. That sort of hit me when I first went back to the U.S. and it was in L.A. And all of a sudden noticed, hey, well, I'm looking at Hebrew here, but it looks awfully like this katakana script, which is one of the 3 Japanese alphabets. And there's also in terms of ascension, and this is poignant for today actually, Hifumi Shinji, Hifumi meaning 1, 2, 3, the number is 1, 2, 3. This is a set of automatic writing or channeling that came down in the 50s to a Shinto priest who was in Chiba outside of Tokyo. And this has been an enormous boom in the last maybe 4 years or so, with several books coming out about this Tenmei Okamoto, who is the priest and the Hifumi Shinji writings. So this 1, 2, 3 element has come into play in some of our events as well. And this also ties into a researcher who I met, who ties into the crash of JAL Flight 123 in the mid-'80s, which has a whole lot of holes in the official story and connections potentially to some of the ancient artifacts that are in Japan, and some of the sort of potentially ET or reverse engineer technology as well. And today is the anniversary of that crash. So
what specifically do the 1, 2, 3 ascension texts say?
They actually describe, and the biggest thing was that with the 3/11 Fukushima disaster, that was sort of in some way predicted. It talks about the fact that Japan is at the forefront of this ascension wave in terms of taking a lot of the some of the heavier blows as we kind of go through the earth changes and stuff, with the earthquake and the tsunami being really a big moniker of that. It also mentions that, and it could be in terms of this new wave of information coming from the West in terms of the internet, that a lot of the ascension information is going to come from outside of Japan. That's in there as well. Also talking about a lot of the kind of the morality about living a more how we should go into more of a space-age society, or getting away from the more monetary focused drive of things, a more capitalistic way of living. So it seems like a lot of people have, it's a Ko-Shinto way of thinking. It's trying to it's almost like tying back to more of the hunter-gatherer element of when Japan was kind of untarnished, so to speak, by more post-war capitalist ideals and philosophies.
So people living in modern Japan are feeling a resurgence of interest in the ancient ideals that their ancestors, rather than the 20th century Western ideals that they so successfully embraced.
Exactly, right. And I think that's going to be some of those ideals are much closer to nature and much closer to sort of an ET's or a space age society than we might initially realize. So that's, I think, Japan's role. It's and in its essence, this one, the Hifumi text, the 1, 2, 3 texts are really describing Japan's role in helping kind of transition into this post-ascension or and more of an enlightened society.
Japan has a leadership role in this area.
Or it could be more of setting an example, so to speak. So yeah, the more I'm here, the more I see that being more relevant. Mm-hmm. And Japan, with Hiroshima and Nagasaki being one of the few or the only country that's experienced those kind of events, and as we know from testimony of people, missile-based commanders, and the fact that the ETs have had interest in or are alarmed and concerned about our use of nuclear weapons and technology. The Fukushima disaster is, right in theme with those speculations.
Well, I did an interesting study of the head of the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Association, and at the time of the Fukushima incident, he was commenting to the press, and this is a Japanese gentleman, and I found a message through my RVP exercise where I detected him talking about the potential fear of a UFO invasion.
Yeah.
And so I thought that the idea was felt profoundly by this person in the face of that disaster. And my earlier studies in Texas related to UFO activity in regions where nuclear power plants had been in operation, and concerns about water quality issues related to mismanagement of nuclear waste and operation of that equipment. It seemed to me, in my mind, the idea that the ETs were concerned about the condition of the natural resources here, because they have a vested interest or shared interest in the uses of those resources for their purposes. That the humans aren't the only consciousnesses engaged in using the Earth's resources. There are other beings that have a stake in that as well. And I'm not just talking about the animal and the plant kingdom, but other developed species.
Right. Exactly. Well, I think it should be said that the theory. There's already 3 books out about the Fukushima disaster in Japan that are based solely on the fact that it was a man-made event, whether that be HARP triggered or not. But the 3/11 was Japan's 9/11, and just in the last few months, they've had huge rallies in Tokyo. People were surprised in the news how calm and collected the Japanese victims of the disaster were after there was no looting and things like that. That was famous in the news. But in the last few months, things have kind of heated up with the restarting of after the disaster. All the reactors in Japan were shut down, but the restarting of one in Fukui Prefecture on the Japan seaside, on the Korean side of the country, really sparked off a big demonstration, and the numbers have been growing. I think that they had up to 200,000 in Yoyogi Park in Tokyo a few weeks ago in mid-July. So it's an unprecedented kind of raising of the voices of the Japanese populace here as well regarding this issue. Their point is, which is kind of hard to believe, they've brought radioactive tainted material and garbage all the way across the country to Kyushu here, and now have burned that and kind of caused, it's almost like they're trying to spread the radiation around the country intentionally. It's unfathomable. And so that's right in our area here. So we've had, even places that were far, far from the disaster area have been affected by, whether it be in dairy products or vegetables, and also in the air and in the water. And it's almost like, with this, the fact that debris was brought more than halfway across the country to Kyushu here, and then burned and dispersed into the air, is sort of very highly questionable.
Yeah, I think it's profoundly disturbing, this entire event, its impact on the Japanese people local to Fukushima, across the islands, and it raises a lot of very difficult questions about the nature of the work that was actually being done in those reactors that led to the disaster, and the misplanning and mismanagement on the part of the giant corporations who were involved. I know scientists left their jobs at one of those corporations over their concerns about the safety of the operation of that kind of equipment. So it's this legacy stuff. It's we're all sharing the pain, so to speak, and I respect that the people in different parts of Japan wouldn't want that kind of hazardous waste material anywhere near their neighborhoods, for the sake of the future generations. So the world holds out a lot of hope for a future where we can find solutions to these problems, but currently the Fukushima, has left traces on all of us. But there's still hope. In spite of our blundering ways as humanity, there is still hope for us, Greg. And one of the areas I want you to help me understand more about is the inner dimensions of your experience related to UFO contact and what you describe as an activation experience in 2008 that led you on a journey. Tell us more about this story, about your inner growth and development and its relatedness to your interest in contact with these higher intelligences.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think a lot of this actually, the seeds had been planted way back since childhood, I think, and then as I look back now, I can see that. But going to the ranch and having that sort of real big push, seeing the real thing in person for the first time, really sparked a huge flow of events, and then the way that developed afterwards, even from hearing about the ranch itself. When I was listening to that Coast to Coast show via audio, archived videos, I realized something important, that I had actually heard the show and it stuck out in my mind as a fourth grader in upstate New York, way back when in the early 80s, and back in elementary school. And I think that must have been Whitley Strieber talking about the whole abduction element at that point. But when I kind of many years later realized that this was that same show, that was sort of a huge epiphany, that things have been connected in ways and in a kind of outside of time in a way. And after things, after I returned to Tokyo, I was floored by the experience and sort of powered up from the energies of the land, and all sorts of things occurred after that. But I thought that it was over, and hey, I can't wait to go back there. And I thought it was over until I started seeing things in the sky of Tokyo and whatnot. And sort of every time I would see that, I got that same feeling back as if I was in the field of dreams, or it was almost like something was helping to remind me, because as we live our everyday lives, even an experience like that, a life-changing experience like I had, can kind of get washed out or thinned out over time. So over the next couple of years, I ended up moving back to the U.S. and was guided to the right information right at the right time. This whole flow or sort of download continued. And before I actually met James Gilliland last year for the first time in person, we had spoken on the phone one time, and again, it was sort of like I was getting pushed to have this experience sort of on my own in an isolated way, so that it would have an unshakable amount of independence, and also B, sort of convinced, so that I would be convinced that things were happening in a way that was unique to my own experience. That being said, when I finally listened to the classic James Gilliland interview on Coast, which was his last appearance, where they did an intention experiment on the air, I immediately got the feeling during listening to that interview, I got to call and say hello. I can't believe I was at this place, and I've heard that rarely James picks up the phone himself, and I called the ranch to say hello, and he picked up. I think it must have been on the first ring, and we talked briefly about, just let them know about some of the things that were happening in Japan as far as chemtrail activity and whatnot. And the next day, I think he had maybe done a clearing or something while we were on the phone that I didn't know about. But the next day, I was at an airport in East Coast, and I was actually shown the whole cloud ship element. So this was an enormous development for me. Then this whole next level opened up, where I was shown that there are not only craft that we're seeing in the mountains and in the skies, but they're also disguised in ways that are right out of some sort of like cartoon or animation movie. So the whole another whole veil dropped after that. So it's been an interesting process of development, and the way I've been kind of guided step by step, from places unseen, as you might say. So that this led me back to my return into Japan, which was for personal reasons, and I had an inkling that I was going to do something with JCETI, but it ended up that was the main reason I came back in the end. And like I said, we put a book out last year, and working on a new one now, and it's been this whole barrage of sort of this homework or things we've been asked to do here, and it's just been a real pleasure. So it's been an ongoing process.
Yeah, and it sounds like you're very ambitious, but there's a lot of the public is really responding well to your initiative, and you're on the front of a wave of growth and change in social consciousness. So there's a very exciting future. Not only are the local people interested, but as you said, it seems that the ETs are supporting your objectives as well.
Right. Yeah. I think one of the things we've been doing, with the whole higher dimensional guides and masters with our work at JCETI has been definitely helping out a lot with not only an information element. We did a big feature last year, which you have obviously appeared in, and we did that was a big 20-page article on the ranch and the history there, and James's experience, and also. We've been doing a lot of the transpersonal release sessions with them, which have really been helping people to clear out these old blockages, and it's really kind of, you had to kind of really be here to see. But there's a lot of the same people share a lot of the same misconceptions that that really have sort of been cleared out in the West in some ways. So I run into the same type of issues. A lot with our members, and a lot of the same misconceptions. So presenting this new sort of paradigm, this new cosmology to people has been extremely effective, and as people kind of get one step closer to the truth, and a lot of that kind of it is happening on energetic level as well, where people are kind of waking up to the fact that they do have a guide or this support from other places. And so it's again, it's not only our work happens outside in the field, as well as when we're working in media, and it's really it's been a nonstop daily process for over 2 years now.
And you have a new book that's coming out?
Yes, we've had I really first was hoping to have a manual together, and one of my first goals was translating some stuff that I was writing, and getting a sort of just a how-to manual together. But that sort of had the brakes put on so that we could actually be out in the field, generating our own evidence, generating our own episodes and photos and video. So now we've had a good run for over 2 years now. So finally really sitting down to kind of take care of some of the organizational work and desk work that's involved with publishing a manual together, and then a lot of that is going to be in a book as well. So like I said, more so than the video or audio interview media, there's a very active publishing media. We're working with one of the new kind of the new kids on the block that's really making waves in the spiritual and conspiracy alternative history area of publishing here, releasing a lot of interesting titles. So we're hoping to make a new sort of template here in terms of the consciousness regarding human-initiated contact and the ETI cosmology, and tying it in with the information that's in Japan already and our experiences. Looking towards how that's going to affect people for the rest of this year and years to come.
It's very exciting. Well, we've been talking about UFOs in Japan, the Shinto, the Shendao, or the Heaven Way, otherwise known as the Spiritual Path, with Greg Sullivan from JCETI, JCETI, and the website jceti.org, the Japan Center for Extraterrestrial Intelligence in Kyushu, Japan, producing some remarkable Skywatch events, videos of ground lights, just some amazing video materials coming out. I'm sure we're going to be hearing more from Greg in the years to come. It's been excellent speaking with you today, Greg. I want to thank you very much for sharing your time with the Secret Message Report, and I hope that we'll be able to speak again soon.
I appreciate it, John. Thanks a million for having me. It was a pleasure.
This is the Secret Message Report, and we'll be back again.